Hi everyone, my name is Nisa Gonzalez and today I'll be presenting on Chapter 6, that is Perspectives on Gangs and Peer Group Influences Pertaining to Delinquency Causation. My assigned prompt was, how have the activities and interests of gangs in the inner cities of large metropolitan areas changed in the last several decades, and how might these changes impact how we address gangs in legislation? To begin, the definition of gang varies widely depending on who is defining the term. The textbook provides two primary definitions by Moore and the Chicago Police Department. According to Moore, a gang can be described as a friendship group of adolescents who share common interests with the more or less clearly defined territory in which most of the members live. They are committed to defending one another, the territory, and the gang name in the status-seeking fights that occur in school and on the streets. Now, the Chicago Police Department, which focuses on the illegal behavior of individuals, defines a street gang as an association of individuals who exhibit the following characteristics in varying degrees: a gang name and recognizable symbols, a geographic territory, a regular meeting pattern, and an organized continuous course of criminality. There are some types of gang characteristics that are easy to distinguish among groups of people, which include some type of organizational structure and leadership, a name and some type of insignia or colors to identify group members, a specific turf or area where the gang meets and seeks to be in control, and involvement in some type of illegal or undesirable behavior that is frowned upon by the larger society. Interestingly enough, the development of many of the gangs that exist today appear to be almost identical to the process described in the research conducted on Chicago in the 1920s. Most of the research that was provided in the text focuses on the Chicago area, where it was found that, in the 1950s, gang organization and activities seemed to center around defense of territory and proof of strength through fighting. Now, compared to the 1960s, gang members developed an intensified spirit of brotherhood and camaraderie and were more conscious of the ethnic or racial qualities enhanced by gang membership. In a 1969 study on the gang Vice Lords, researchers identified the elements of the gang's culture as heart ideology, soul ideology, brotherhood ideology, and game ideology. The heart was reference to the total devotion of individuals to the gang, where they follow the leadership and suggestions of the higher ranked regardless of personal risk. The soul refers to both the black experience and the stripping away of pretense to bear one's most intense feelings and emotions. Brotherhood involves the concept of mutual help and is frequently reinforced through ritualistic behavior. And lastly, game was reference to the ability to manipulate others through craftiness. Although gang activity did not decrease significantly in the 1960s, gang activity did not receive much public attention because of the overwhelming social problems facing the nation regarding youth protests, rebellion, and the wide use of drugs. In the 1970s, gangs had distinctive characteristics that set them apart from earlier decades. A study on street gangs in New York City during 1971 through 1976 revealed that these new gangs had bigger and better organizations, more sophisticated weapons, and a greater propensity for crime and violence than its ancestor, which was known as the Fighting Gang of the 1950s. Miller researched youth gang activities of the 70s to examine what portion of crime in the cities was attributed to gangs and how effective police and service agencies controlled the activities. The research defined the age range of gang members from 12 to 21 years, with the largest concentration in the 16 to 17-year-old group. Furthermore, urban youth gangs were found to be predominantly male, about 90% or more of its members, and when comparing racial and ethnic compositions, they found that more than 80% of gang members were found to be of Black or Hispanic background. Serious gang activity was found to be in the slum areas of cities, where gang violence was identified as assuming four forms. The first, normal gang violence, describes attacks in which both assailants and victims are gang members. The second, victimization of non-gang members with social characteristics similar to those of gang members. The third, crimes against the general public. And lastly, victimization of young children, the elderly, females, or those who are not community members. Overall, an increased tendency of gang members to victimize innocent children and adults appeared to be an important aspect of gang behavior in the 1970s that was different from the behavior of gangs of earlier eras. The trend towards increased violence and use of more sophisticated weapons by certain types of gangs continued in the 1980s, 1990s, and 2000s. A study conducted on 7 Ohio cities identified 3 typologies: hedonistic gangs, which are concerned with having a good time and getting high on drugs and alcohol; instrumentally oriented gangs, which are focused on property crimes for economic gain; and predatory gangs who commit robberies and other crimes of opportunity and whose members' use of highly addictive drugs contribute to their violent, assaultive behavior. In previous decades, the racial and ethnic makeup of gangs was predominantly blacks or Hispanics, but other distinct types have also emerged, which include gangs of Asians, Vietnamese, and Chinese, who are involved in crimes against property, extortion for protection, and kidnapping, with members of their own ethnic group usually the targets of their activity. Other new gangs include the heavy metal, punk rockers, and satanic groups in which their members are predominantly white youths who are devoted to heavy metal rock music and behavior chosen for its shock value. Their gang activities range from drug trafficking, parent abuse, grave robbing, and destruction of animal and human remains. In addition to the increase in violence, homicides committed by gang members have distinctive characteristics. They are more likely than non-gang homicides to take place in public areas with consequent danger to innocent bystanders and to involve automobiles and firearms. Since 2000, gang-related homicides involving gang members killing each other or killing persons caught in the crossfire of gang violence have increased sharply in several cities. Whereas, compared to the late 1990s, the decline in the number of homicides in large cities were thanks to police pressure on gangs, the strong economy, and a decline in crack cocaine trafficking. Additionally, drug involvement and trafficking have been identified as factors in the violence of gang, but several researchers have found that gang violence is more closely related to the intergang interpersonal conflict than to drug wars. As a result of a study, it was concluded that most gangs did not have stability, and adolescents who were members had higher involvement in violent crimes before, during, and after their gang membership than did adolescents who were not members of gangs, and being a member of a gang did not offer protection from violence from other gangs. Also recognized as a factor in the deadliness of gang violence is the ability of juveniles to easily acquire firearms. In terms of numbers, a study revealed that more than 80% of the incarcerated gang members that were surveyed reported that they owned a revolver, automatic weapon, or semi-automatic handgun. It was concluded that possessing and carrying guns was associated with the increase in movement from non-gang member to member of a gang. Now, observing the increase in violence that exists between youths in school and the rise of their involvement in illegal activities, one might ask themselves if the appeal of gang membership is based on the same factors as those that existed in the past years. Such new factors are the search for solutions and crime for profit, which can be closely related with the opportunity theory that holds that delinquent behavior is a search for solutions to the problem of adjustment that arises when lower-class youths must face and recognize a discrepancy between their aspirations and the opportunities open to them for achieving their goals. When discussing how the interests and activities of gangs have changed in the last several decades, it is necessary to analyze and understand the needs of individuals. Maslow believed that a person's behavior can be explained by their response to 5 basic human needs that include physiological needs, which are basic items required for physical survival such as food and water; things needed for safety and security, such as environmental factors such as a place to live and protection from harm; belonging needs, which include membership in a family, friendship, or other groups; self-esteem needs, such as recognition or approval from others; and self-actualization needs that include desires to achieve and excel. These basic human needs are often partially satisfied at all levels, but never completely at any need level, which can explain why youth seek these needs with the gang, as they feel a sense of belonging, duty, status, and overall importance. Nonetheless, the interest and activities of gangs compared to the past decades has turned towards an increase in violence by the use of firearms and drug activity. On the basis, some appealing factors are still the same as Maslow's basic human needs describes. In terms of the changes of interest and activities of gangs, it is important to observe how they influence and affect legislation. Typically, the control of gang activity has been defined as a police matter. However, research has concluded that its prevention and control is a difficult task that must involve the entire community. In order to reduce and control gang activities, proactive or reactive measures are used, whereas proactive control focuses on preventing gangs from forming by providing positive alternatives for youngsters who have few options to channel their energy and meet their needs. On the other hand, reactive control occurs when gangs are recognized as present in a community and may include formation of special police gang control units, gang street worker programs, and implementation of firm justice system responses to unlawful gang activity. When addressing in legislation, there is a strong purpose for community involvement when involving juveniles. There are special police gang units that were created by the legislation to be able to gather information on existing gangs and their influence on youths and how to counteract their criminal activity. In conclusion, one of the factors that defines a gang that has not changed throughout the decades is the control of territory. At the basis of current and past years, this principle still stands strong. However, the extremity of gang violence has increased immensely that now endangers innocent bystanders. As a result, it has become necessary to enact legislation that gathers intelligence that can be used to suppress gangs and prevent further illegal activities of members. Nonetheless, criminal involvement and social involvement is still at a rise and used as an alternative to be able to help youths change their path before they reach adulthood and continue on this path of gangs. The ideologies that are at the basis of gang activities and interests are similar, but the access to firearms and drug wars have now changed the direction of many gangs that originally focused primarily on seeking a sense of purpose to engaging in a large range of illegal criminal activities. It is important that in order to find solutions to the problem of gang delinquency, the social problems that breed it must be combated first in order to prevent further appeals and motivations by existing gangs and gang members. Thank you, everyone.